that are associated with 12 Rules for Life, and they have a bearing on this question that I want to answer tonight. And so I'm going to sit. I have some notes which I don't usually use, but I'm going to use them tonight because I haven't got everything about this particular notion memorized in some sense yet, because I'm still working it out. But that should work out okay. So we'll see what happens. So yeah, well, good. So Windows worked, that's always good. I've seen it not work sometimes when Bill Gates demonstrates it, and that's got to be very, very embarrassing. Although I would say, all things considered, he seems to have done quite well. All right, so here's the question that came up last night. And this is a strange question for what's essentially a political show. Near the end, a gentleman on videotape came up and he discussed the topic of human dignity. It's not a topic you hear a lot about. There's a lot of topics that are sort of related to human beings that you don't hear a lot about anymore. You don't hear a lot about nobility. You don't hear a lot about endurance, let's say, stalwartness, courage, dignity. Those aren't values that we discuss much. Responsibility being another one, which is one I'm quite thrilled about, all things considered, because I think it's the pathway to meaning itself. But so his was the topic of human dignity, and he asked us a question, do you believe in God? And then he said, as a Catholic, I don't see any other way that we can have a universe with dignity. And so I'm not so concerned about the second part of his commentary, although I might get to that. But the first part, do you believe in God, is a question that's been leveled at me many times. And I'm going to, there's some other people on the panel, and I'm going to just review what they said briefly, and then I'm going to talk about what I said, and then I'm going to fix what I said, I hope, so that it's better. At least that's the plan. So Terry Butler, who is a Labor frontbencher, said, I'm agnostic. People are inherently valuable because they are people. And no, that doesn't work out. It's one of those 1-minute answers, except it's actually only 10 seconds. Because you can make the opposite argument, and people do all the time, like the Club of Rome, for example, which was an organization in Rome, logically enough, formed in the 60s, was very much concerned about the terribly detrimental effect that human beings were having on the planet. And I believe it was one of the Club of Rome members who coined the idea, and if it wasn't, it was someone who was thinking exactly the same way, so it works out either way, that human beings were something approximating a cancer on the planet, because of all the terrible things we were doing ecologically and so forth. That was back when people believed we were going to overpopulate the planet to such a degree by the year 2000 that there would be widespread privation and starvation, which, by the way, if you haven't noticed, there isn't. If you look at the terrible things that people do, apart from the despoiling of the natural environment, let's say, there's all the, malevolence that's associated with human interactions and also human social systems. And it isn't so obvious as a consequence of that you can make a straightforward case that human beings are inherently valuable merely because they're human beings, because you can make an equally logical case from first principles that they're inherently, destructive, or that they should be perhaps limited in their ability to procreate, or that they are a catastrophe for the planet as a whole, or that our entire history is nothing but a sequence of what would you call unrequited malevolence, and that people generally can't be trusted. And so I don't find that answer particularly satisfying. I think it's it's just self-referential. People are inherently valuable because they are people. It's like, well, you don't really get anywhere with an answer like that.